Today we're working on an X5 diesel BMW. I believe it's around 2007, 2008. And we are doing the suspension work on it. So we got some H&R springs. So I already assembled the front shocks. So everything is new, from the strut to the springs to the mounts. There's the rear right there, and all new front suspension components right here. This is the ride height for before, and we'll get in after. So it's gonna look good. It's got nice wheels on it right now. So let's get to it. Okay, first things I'm starting with is removing these covers. They are 13, and it's just like a 90-degree turn. And then once you get them all out, you just gotta fish it out. Not difficult. And that's what the cup looks like. So don't overdo it or they'll get damaged. Kind of like that. So that's a good one. That one's been overturned. And get that out. And then we're going to be taking out these right here, these trim pieces, so we can get to the struts that's underneath. So you can see one nut's right there. And you got your brake fluid reservoir underneath. And common on these are these trim pieces. So you can see this one is broken. So if you're performing this job, I recommend to replace these, especially with the 6 cylinders, because of the straight 6. So what happens over time is when these are broken, it'll let the water in and onto the engine, and then you'll have issues with spark plug, because the ignition coil sits right up top and then water pools into there. So it's good to get these replaced as well. Okay, with taking off these trims right here, you have a 10 mil right there, and a T20 Torx. We have one right there and one right there. First things first, this middle piece will come off. We have another T20 there and a T20 there, and then this trim piece will come off like so. And then 2 more T20s right here. And we got the cabin filter box right here. So these are 13s, and just a 90-degree turn. So just 3 of them. And then the box, unplug this connector here. And there you go. And then you got your cabin filters right there. So if you need to replace your cabin filters, there it is. Okay, so these are the suspension components that we're replacing. The upper control arm and both lower control arms right here. So this one right here and the one in the middle right there. So to do this job, of course, you got to remove these 2 bolts right here, this nut and bolt right here, and that should pop out. You can always spread this a little bit. Those aren't too difficult to come out. And then for the lower control arm, you got to move this cover. There's a long bolt right there. And the center control arm, that one's not too tough as well. More covers that have to be removed right there, and that nut and bolt, and then the bolts that are in the actual knuckle itself. This is the progress. So I removed the top strut. I was removing the upper control arm, and if you have the strut in place, you're going to get stuck with the taking out the bolts itself. So that one's still kind of stuck in there. And I was taking out the bottom one, and this lower control arm right here, the bolt's getting stuck on that. So I'm going to remove that one. believe that one is a 21 millimeter. Sorry, that's an 18 millimeter. And we need a 12.27, okay, for the ones down here that we're going to remove. So one there and one there, because we're going to be replacing both those lower control arms. These are a 16 millimeter, so there's a nut on this side, and there's a nut under here. So you can either remove the coolant reservoir, or you can move the fender liner, and it'll be right there, easy access. So right now I'm in the process of removing this cover right here, and so I could hold on to the nut on that side to remove that bolt, and then I'll get the bolt out of for the strut, and I'll get the strut removed. I remove the bolt that holds the strut in place to that fork, and then hopefully that'll come out easy for me so I can swap it out. Okay, progress update. Pain in my ass is what this is. So I had a little trouble getting the bolts out from here, so I was able to finally get it out, and then I put this in. I was able to separate that fairly easy. I used a punch to spread it open. I took the whole thing out of the car, and then I spreaded it. So right now you can see just kind of popped out right now, which was fine. I'll put it back in. Got that control arm replaced. These are 18 here, and the nut on the inside. Trouble I'm having right now is getting this lower control arm right here out. This is still stuck in the knuckle. You can see been hammering at it, trying to break it loose, so having trouble with that. Had to take the axle out. This axle was replaced before, so it was easy to go back in. Please note that if you're going to attempt to remove it, make sure you're able to put it back in, because if it's hard to go out, it's definitely going to hard to come back in, and you're going to have issue getting it back in. And there is a special BMW tool to put that back in. So let this pain in my ass continue. I was able to get the driver side done this morning. This is day 2 working on the X5. So what I ended up doing, so now I'm working on the passenger side, is I put back the lower control arm, that one right here, and then I took the 12-point bolt out, nut, I should say, and I put the jack right on the tip here, and I hammered on the knuckle, so I put enough pressure to where it was slightly lifting the vehicle, and then it just popped right out. So that helped out a lot. So working on this side, that's the first step I did, working on the suspension. Now I'm doing the upper control arm. So I got both of the nuts and bolts loose. The nuts are out. So the one goes right here. You can see the hole right there. And the other one you can't see because it's tucked away underneath. So what I ended up doing was I removed the wiring and pushed it back, and it's tucked underneath. So I ended up getting my 16mm wrench. So this side I held it in place, and then used a magnet, and same thing, without actually seeing anything, held it in place, got on there. So used that, and I used this right here, 16mm. So it's flat enough to where it won't jam up if it starts backing out. And a magnet, of course. Magnet helped out to get the nut. The next step in this process now, I'm going to remove the strut so I can remove these bolts, because as you can see, this one should be able to come out close, but I'm going to remove the strut so I'm able to remove the control arm, upper control arm. This is the third day working on the X5, finishing up the driver's side. So what ended up happening was this bolt broke, so put a new bolt in there. I torqued it down and then walked away, and then for like maybe a second, and then it just popped. So probably taking it off, cracked it, fractured it, and then putting it back on just gave out. Because what happened was, it usually, because you got the aluminum, it just starts to rust in there. And you know, good practice if you're going to replace this or remove this, replace the bolt, get a new one, nut and bolt. Now down here, remove the undercover. This one's kind of tough to get to with this cover in the way, but I managed to remove that. Now the tough part ended up being the axle shaft here. I ended up ordering an Amazon tool, which is this one right here. It's the drive shaft puller, and this will thread in, so it's thin enough to go through. So that goes on. Then this will go on and it'll thread on like so. That goes through, that threads on all the way. And then you just put that flush, and then this will go all the way down to here like so. And then you just rotate it and it'll pull it. So, because I had to push that axle through to get the lower control arm out, and wouldn't go back on without this tool. I'm sure, you know, you keep working at it, but you know what? This tool, $80 Canadian. So for that price at that point, now I have it. Works on Subaru, so mostly work on Subarus and BMWs, as you can see from my channel. And now I can actually thread the axle nut bolt on and get this side done, and then on to the rear. And I'll show you the ride height. I didn't see much of a difference with the ride height, but I'll get this tire back on and I'll show you between non-lowering springs in the rear versus the front with lowering springs. So this is the rear without the lowering springs, and this is the front with lowering springs. So can't really tell if there's a difference, and if there is, are going to be half to 1 inch from what I'm told. All right, on to the rear now. Now, got the spring out. Pretty easy. Bottle jack. Remove remove your strut. That's getting replaced. And the sway bar link is removed as well. Right there. So, undo those, and then you should be able to pull the spring out. I'm going to swap out the strut as well. Put the spring back in. And yeah, this one's going to be pretty quick now. So let's get these other springs in and see how it looks. Okay, the rear is now done. So this is the after. As you can see, the wheels are different. Customer took the car back. He brought it back so I can do the rear, and he put his winters on. And one more thing, to do the rear shocks here. They are right here. 3 bolts if you're dropping out. I just undid the shocks because he didn't get the hardware for there. But yeah, it's done. Lowered. Now I'm going to torque these wheels down, road test it, and make sure it's good to go.